Travis Wayne Goodsell, all caught up on NCIS now, so now I have tied the missing stuff that I've been seeing lately to what I've been missing. Know why Abby left, and I already knew why Michael Weatherly left because of his show, but how he left and all that stuff. So it's all clear. And if you've watched my videos, I have explained, and thus every now and then I throw in little red-headed girls. And if you've seen certain thumbnails lately, they all tend to include little red-headed girl in various poses for a reason. It's the same reason why Gibbs gets involved, marries red-headed girls. It's the same reason why I also like Castle. And it originates with the Charlie Brown and Snoopy show, as Charlie Brown and the little red-headed girl. There's the New Year's Eve Charlie Brown, where he always has the crush on the little red-headed girl. There's also the Homecoming, It's Your First Kiss Charlie Brown, I think it's called, where he does actually finally get to kiss the little red-headed girl. But it's that attachment to that show, as Snoopy was the one who was with the little red-headed girl that New Year's, which is why I'm a big fan of dogs. I later found out that I was born in the year of the dog, in the Chinese New Year. And I guess we're in the year of the ox. Last year was the year of the rat. So, but my actual favorite animal seems to come from my first grade year, when first grade teacher had us do assignments every day that he then compiled into a published book for us, which was awesome of him. And so he had a different activity for us each and every single day, and we would put it on paper. For the one about birds, he did a little presentation on different kinds of birds, and we then had to select a bird and then draw the bird. My dad, being the great and wonderful guy that he is, has since destroyed that first publication of mine, as he purposely helped the church have me indefinitely incarcerated as a terrorist, all because he helped to kidnap my children. And I've found a video today about how to talk to brainwashed people. It's technically cognitive dissonance, where normally smart people, when they can't handle the truth, they cognitively separate themselves from reality in order to process the trauma of the truth. unless they're doing it for malicious purposes. But that's not the case with the majority of Mormons. And that is the strangest thing, that Mormons are among the highest group that get educated because the church has BYUs. And so that helps in that process to elevate the educational level of Mormons. But then it doesn't answer why Mormons believe in the lies, deceptions, and misinformation and disinformation that the church is giving us. Those of us who have left the church, we were not caught up in the cognitive dissonance. Whereas those of us who stayed behind in Mormonism, we all can't figure out why the hell they believe such things and act in complete contradiction to the teachings of Mormonism. All Mormons know that when you take away somebody's agency, you're following Lucifer. It's not complicated. And yet, a person who has cognitive dissonance, you can't use logic on them. It just reinforces their fantasy world to protect themselves from the reality. And that reality is that the church is false. And this is why Mormons want me assassinated. Why the church wants me assassinated rather than just excommunicating me. And the guy posed 7 ways to confront such a person, sort of like being shocked when they say something completely outrageous. Or summarizing incorrectly. And stuff like that. But it still doesn't help Mormons unless they have a way out, a way to make sense of the new reality where the church is false. See, I was able to do it because of the pursuit of my education. That was a foundation that prepared me for when I came to the reality that the church is not only false, but is murderous and wants me dead. Because the church was expecting, by what they did to me, that I would be a complete mental wreck. They were counting on it. They purposely planned and orchestrated for me to be mental mush right now. As you can see, it didn't work. That's because I was educated and prepared for what they were going to do. And so, unlike certain characters on NCIS, who weren't prepared when the big shock comes along, I am prepared. And so for me, replacing Mormonism, I'd already been in the process of replacing Mormonism because I was pursuing what the truth was. Mormons don't do that. They pursue their own lives. They're trying to survive paycheck to paycheck, unless they're the filthy rich Mormons, like the rich Zoramites, who despised and cast out the poor from among them, cast them over to the west side of the Zoramite Valley, where the rich lived in the hillside of the mountains, nestled cozy along the earthquake zone at the fault line. We all know this in Utah. The poor have been segregated from the rich. But, and so, yeah, Mormons know they're in the wrong. Mormons know that attacking me is choosing the wrong. My neighbor, who I talked about, he knows he's not supposed to treat human beings the way he treated me. Especially with the evidence of the past 6 years of me helping him, digitizing conference for him. And he just threw it all away because of the brainwashing of the church. And so for me, I do not use the tactic that psychologists create. Because what this guy was wanting us to do, to talk to smart psychopaths, was to create a new box category for them to replace their incorrect thinking boxes and to transition into the newly created thinking boxes. You're not supposed to have boxes at all. Get rid of them. As I've been trying to go over, psychology is not a science, it's a fake science. You're supposed to use science with logical, sound arguments to design and structure your life. That was the ancient practice. And the enemy of mankind has even turned philosophy into a pseudoscience when it originally was sound and reasonable and scientifically based, such as it's still seen in the biblical text. For example, the science of agriculture for our belief systems. We can know a false prophet through this agricultural science metaphor, a seed versus a fruit. And so by their fruits you can know if the prophet is fruity or legitimately good. Because of what results from following their word. And so you've heard me for this past year talk about how we know Nelson by his fruits, that it's not just corrupt, it's downright evil. He is purposely murdering believers in him and in Mormonism. Because what has he been saying? We're concerned about your safety, so we're only going to open up the church when it's safe to do so. Church has been open. It's not safe to do so. But because he's got a hold over Mormons' minds, Mormons who are faithful and devoted to Nelson go to church, go to the temple, go back on missions, die after getting sick. Those are the consequences of following Nelson. And I know it's logic, and I know Mormons hate me for it, and they want me dead rather than saying, no, Nelson, we will not obey you. You want us dead. So the bird. That's what Mormons should be doing if they were using their smarts. Their education. Unfortunately, a BYU education is not really qualified as an education, except for the required governmental courses. And so, for me, I've tried to put my trust in the Book of Mormon, that the Word has a more powerful effect than to flatter, pacify, and deceive, which is the psychological manipulation game that psychologists say needs to be done to these nutcases. But religious nutcases fall into that same category as the guy mentioned in the video, not just the political ones, which he focused on. And so, as it turns out, I'm not seeing results. As Mormons are a good portion of my viewers, because my analytical program tells me so. And having told you guys so in videos, sure enough, I've seen a switch to more John Dehlin stuff and less church stuff. So yeah, the Mormons are fleeing because I caught them. But I've caught John Dehlin too, guys. He's the psychologist. What he's doing to fraud you is take you from the Mormon box belief system and put you in his preset categorized ex-Mormon box system. And so it's from one cognitive dissonance to another, because it's based on the lie. And it just happens to be the same lie that Mormons use. It's just he uses it for a different belief system of that same big lie, that the church is a fraud. But yeah, it's from Brigham Young. So yeah, I will never deceive you. I may be wrong on information. I remember a video I did the other day where I had to put in the video, oops, I mean the star Albarn, whatever it was, as I called it Apophis instead. But I don't lie to you. I present you correct information. The video about the pioneers and the handcart company, that's all true. I can read the Wikipedia page and identify the lies. As I pointed out to you as I was doing the video, you know, they said, well, the church refers to this as such and such, that Brigham Young was inspired of God. The church? No. There were more who weren't a part of the church and created their own churches, and thus you can't say the church believed that he was inspired by God. If you said anything, you would say those who followed Brigham Young believed Brigham Young was inspired by God. That's more correct. And that would tell people, oh, yeah, obviously, that's why they follow him, is because they believe he's from God. Whereas the other people followed the other people because they believed that they were the right ones to succeed Joseph Smith and thus inspired by God. That's just how it works. And unfortunately, Dan Brown is right when he writes, history is written by the winners. And too often in world history, the winners are the losers. Speaking of character traits rather than consequences. And that's what the case was with the succession crisis, is that the Brighamite branch got to rewrite Joseph Smith's history. They got to tell the history of Joseph Smith, as nobody else gets to tell their side except within their little congregations. And the truth is getting buried deeper and deeper every single day that the church is not stopped and that the truth is not put forward to explain what happened and why it happened. So, but I've already done it. That's why I'm doing these videos, to help let you know what the truth is. So, but when you get caught up in a frenzy, thinking that if somebody points out the truth that is contrary to what you've been told by the leaders, and thus you only believe, you get angry, and you can't reason with, you can't communicate with such a person. And they shut down because they can't handle it, they can't process it. Brigham Young was a murderer, a sex trafficker, a bully, a terrorist. So, yeah. 53% were kids. That's what I found out in the other video. Alrighty. So, it's a battle that may not be won, but that's why I keep doing it. It's because I know, just as the Book of Mormon keeps repeating over and over and over again, that's how people's lives get shattered. And it even talks about it in the Book of Mormon. Because Mormon actually, steps in to explain what just happened that he wrote about, abridged. And says they believed it was because of the wrath of God. He specifically mentions that. And it would be in Alma 3, because later on he says that people cause their own cursings. It's not God. So even though other parts in the Book of Mormon he says God cursed them, he explains in Alma 3, people bring upon themselves their own cursing. And it's about the Amlicites who joined the Lamanites. And so previously in that verse, or in chapter 2, one of those, there's the destruction that occurred, and he steps in and says they believed. I've heard Mormons refer to this passage, they don't bring that up. They skip over it, they gloss over it, and thus was created the pride cycle of Mormonism. You guys know that, don't you? Yeah, that's a false narrative. There is no such thing as a pride cycle. There's a wickedness cycle. The part at the top where they're righteous? No, they're not righteous. They believe they are righteous. That's what Moroni wants us to understand. That they believe that they were cursed by God for their wickedness. See how that works? There's no such thing as a pride cycle. That CES instructor who got it put in the CES manuals and thus got it passed on to the brethren for conferences and so on and so forth. He's a liar, liar, pants on fire face. He's wrong. There is no such thing as a pride cycle in the Book of Mormon. It's wickedness that keeps perpetuating it because they never find out the truth. And it's not until you figure out the truth that you break the cycle. And this is for any non-mind altering addiction. You know, like porn. There's no such thing as a porn addiction. There's no such thing as a sex addiction. I'm sorry, President Clinton lied about the lie. Yes, he lied about having a blowjob with the new hero of Islam. When we went into Iraq, they found her picture as posters on the Iraqi men's walls. She was their centerfold. But yeah, there's no such thing. Sex is a basic necessity of life, just like eating, sleeping, those other things that psychologists are desperate to find anything to justify building up their clientele and thus making more money to maintain their job security. It's all a fraud. And a person who damages their brain from drugs, they don't need a psychologist. They need a medical doctor. They need therapy from a person who can assist them in trying to figure out how to function, motor skills and all that stuff in life again. Because literally, this is your brain on drugs. Any questions? Remember those commercials from the 80s? And so, yeah, being a druggie is not a mental illness. There is no such thing as mental illness. The whole thing is a fraud. If there is problems with a person's brain, they need to see a medical doctor. So Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that's for a medical doctor, not a psychologist, to sit them on the couch, have them talk about their delusions and whatever hallucinations they're seeing because of the mental damage in the brain. Typically it's with the elderly, and thus their brain is wearing down. That's why it picks up in later years. But don't get fooled by psychology. They're all part of the scam. And so, yeah, they just want to create a different box for you to think in. And they purposely place you in those boxes. They honestly have the belief everybody has a mental illness, and so thus everybody should be seeing a therapist on a regular basis. So evil. That's holding people hostage. That's their job, is to kidnap and hold hostage as many people as they can. They've got the government supporting it. Isn't that great? And the church supports it now that the church has made it clear that they're not the ones who's crazy. It's their fanatical Mormons who go against the church that are the crazy ones. Alrighty, I think that's it for this. I hope you understand. There is no breaking through to Mormonism unless we hold them hostage, tie them down, and force them to hear the truth over and over and over and over and over again until they break. And that's just not legal. But that's the only way to do it. That's the sad part. Is because it's these fanatical Mormons that are being used to destroy America. Not just the Mormons. That's the church's job, is to get Mormons to do it. The rest of the United States, they've got Q from Russia helping the GOP. And both use the symbol of the inverted pentagram to coordinate their attack.